But anyway, let's go ahead and move forward. Edmund Coronel is a good man, and this is him right over here, pointing at him. He is going to be speaking to you guys tonight on the subjects listed in your binders. I met Edmund this last year when my wife and I went to Europe. Him and his wife Martha are really great hosts and have an awesome church going there. I think it's one of the biggest ones, right, in Europe? One of the largest. Yeah, very humble man. But no, it's a really cool church. Very nice people, and it was really cool to go to Germany and just get to see the German people, because I really didn't know what to expect. You know, you think of Europe. Well, I thought of Europe when I thought, oh, Paris, and you think London, you think of Italy, and you think of all these things. But in my mind, I didn't really know what to expect with Germany, and I was like, totally surprised in a good way. It was amazingly beautiful. The history. I mean, Edmund's a huge history buff, and yeah, it's cool. There's so much there. It's rich. But anyway, welcome Edmund up. And this is just for recording. It's not really that loud, but just for recording.
Okay. Well, good evening. Guten Abend is how you say it in Deutschland. We got some Germans in here, maybe? No? Yeah? All right. Good. Praise the Lord. Let me just kind of, before I dive into some of the topics that you have in your study tonight, just share real quick a little bit about myself and my wife. You know what? We're here because we had another grandbaby, so we were blessed. And every time, of course, we come out when that happens. And so it's always hard when we know now it's time to go home or go back to Germany. And we see our kids. I have 3 daughters here, and we begin to see the emotions and all that. And that's part of the cost of being a missionary. We've been out there 15 years. And so basically we've missed all of our grandchildren growing up, pretty much. I have 4, praise the Lord, over there, but I have 6 now grandchildren here in California. And we missed out on that, But that's the cost of just doing what God has called us to do. And yet, so that's why I'm just making hopefully a good presentation of an excuse why my wife didn't come tonight. So she wanted to be with my daughters tonight as we fly back on Tuesday. So, the calling of God, when it comes to missions, and I remember, I'm not sure about this class, first of all. You guys are wanting to go on short-term missions, or are you considering maybe something even more? I just know that when I was at one time in the church as just a servant helping around in the church, that was a lot of learning experience. I think more than people realize, because I've had over the years experience of missionaries, of course, being out there in 15 years. And you see people coming out, starting works or wanting to start works, and you can see how some were never servants in their home church. It's just obvious point. It's sad. And that's why I always encourage, the beginning of really missions work, it starts within your own church as you begin to learn about serving in your own church. Because if you can't serve in your own church, most likely you're not going to serve anywhere else when you get to abroad. Because the dangers of missionaries going abroad is out of sight, out of mind, and it could turn into now a nice vacation. And that's the dangers, really. It's happening more often than what we would like to say. And so with that, the mindset of a servant is so so important. And I pray that God is going to do a work in your hearts. So, you know what? I just ask, can I just pray before we start? Because I think that's important as well. Father, I just want to thank you for this church, for the work that you're doing here, and what you're doing in the hearts of these people here, Lord. The reasons why they're here, the desires to reach people abroad, Lord. And Lord, there is no doubt we know that there is a need. I pray, Lord, for your Spirit, Lord, to raise up and do a mighty work through this church, through these servants, Lord, as they give up their time even now to learn and to prepare their hearts and to consider what it is about missions. So, Lord, bless this time together, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen. One of the things that I learned in my early years, me and my wife got saved at Calvary Chapel Downey, went from there to Royal Reese's Church, Calvary Chapel, back when he was in West Covina. And then we helped plant, after that, Calvary Chapel Chino Hills with Pastor Jack Hibbs. And then we moved to Europe, and there we helped Pastor Nick Long. And Nick Long was in Siegen, Germany, which was the first Calvary Chapel in Europe, and was the largest, actually. And Nick has recently, in the last couple of years, turned the church over to the German, and it was because of physical health issues that he turned that church over. And I went, my wife and I, there to help that church to establish youth ministry. I used to be a youth pastor. And so there's a lot of things in the words that I just mentioned so far. Number one is being a servant. Because one of the things that was important, the thing that I learned in my early years, especially when back in the day, in those early days with Raul Reese, we used to do a lot of Mexico ministry. And back then, Pancho Juarez used to be there. We were friends there at Raul's church. And he helped start La Posada. I don't know if you guys know that facility that used to be in Rosarito. We helped work there, but from there was a lot of ministries going to orphanages. And you know what? One of the greatest things I'll always remember, because it's a personal thing, and this is something that has to happen to each one of you in the ministry as you serve. You know, the group was there. It's an orphanage that was in dire needs. And one of the needs was to be cleaned up, because the guy that was running it was not able to keep up. There wasn't enough help. And yet the demand, he had a big heart for the children, and he never said no. And so he had too many kids, actually. And everybody was appointed to go do this, that, you know. And I got appointed with another brother to clean the toilets, because the restrooms were really bad. And, you know, some people wanted to do, you know, the kids only, this or that. And that's something that is a dangerous thing, because the loss of the servant's heart was at that point, when you're on that mission trip, what do I get to do? And really, that's boom, that comes out. And why do they get to do this and I don't? And that thought is something where it has to be crucified and brought up, because I have seen, as teams come to us, I see the same problem as who gets to do what, and why do I have to do this all the time? And you know, my wife and I and some of our team, we get to really minister to teams that come just in that point alone. And I remember as I was cleaning the urinals with a scraper, because it was that bad, and I just said, Lord, just give me a heart to serve you in any way. I don't want to complain. I want to do whatever I do for you. And I don't care what people think, and I don't care. I just want it. I want that heart because, Lord, my heart even thought, well, why don't I want to play with the kids soccer outside? And I had to deal with that. And I've learned in the ministry, in the mission field, there's a lot of times the Lord is dealing with me direct as I'm serving him. And there's so much to learn in that part. But when it comes to servanthood, that is like the sore muscle one. That's when you can feel the pain as you're doing it. And so I want to encourage you on that because the missions is something that, you know what? One of the things is I can say, especially for the Germany outreaches or any of the Western, you see, because it's great. It's a big difference between going to Haiti or going to the Philippines. Any poorer countries, the people come in a way because sometimes maybe their hearts and motives might be wrong because they're looking maybe for food, clothing, something like that they will come. But yet at the same time, you're using the same thing. Yeah, come, and we will bless you in this. But you have a motive of, I want to give you the gospel, and I want to reach you. Well, when you start dealing with Germany and countries like that, they're as rich as us in many ways. And some things are advanced, and so they wonder, well, what are you coming here trying to offer us? We don't need that. So the food, all that kind of program, they don't work there. And so it's a whole different ball game that we had to learn. But one of the things that blows their mind is when teams come and they serve. Because see, they're more like how can I say it? It'd be like you see maybe at Home Depot, these different races that are out there hungering for a job. Just give me any job. I will do whatever. These type of people, Germany has, but they're from Poland, they're from Romania, from Russia. These are those hungry, poor nations that sit, if I can say, at Home Depot. We have one that looks exactly like Home Depot, actually, and they have those people. But the thing is, when they see a team, Americans come, that are just in that, because they look up to America in many ways, and they see the Christian that is willing. That's what blows their mind because, listen, they get 5 weeks vacation and they get at least 15 holidays. So you're talking, they have a lot of free time and they take that time. But they can't understand. They go, why does Americans, like most of them, only have 2 weeks vacation? They can't understand that. And then I say, yeah. And you know what? They're taking the 2 weeks to come out here to serve you. And that blows their mind. They cannot understand that servant mindset. This is what penetrates the Western style nations, that there's something unique about Americans in that sense. How we're really a giving people. And especially in countries like Germany, when the war happened, we were the ones, I don't know if you know this, we were the ones that treated them like humans directly after the war. They don't like England so much because the war was declared over and England bombed after it was declared over one more time just to give them a kick in the ribs while they were down. And the Germans have never forgotten that. The Russians, they hate because the Russians, when the war was done over, I mean, the Germans were brutal to the Russians, but the Russians from Siberia put all their German prisoners in the trains and shipped them from Siberia back to Germany and froze them to death. And the See? And the Germans have never forgotten that. So there's this, it's amazing. The history there is just phenomenal. And so it's now really learning as when you go to different countries, there's different things that work. But one thing I do know that works all the time is servanthood. And you know, our Lord is the one greatest in that, because we see how he served us in many ways. But when it comes to missions, I got this quote, and I'd like to read it to you. It's from Spurgeon. He says, if there be any one point in which the Christian church ought to keep a fervent white heat, it is that concerning missions. If there be anything about which we cannot tolerate lukewarmness, it's in the matter of sending the gospel to a dying world. And that's one thing, is no matter how great Germany is, from the Protestant movement point, it's over. It is true. Europe is in a post-Christian, neo-pagan era at this point. Okay? And that's why, whether they know it or not, they need the gospel. One of the things that I've learned is that, which is difficult, and when you go to some of these countries, like the Philippines, that's very much, I think Christianity, religion has been there via Catholic, or I know there's a lot of Islam there, but you have to study the country you're going into. And one of the things I do know, again, when you're serving them and they know you're serving them, when they're poorer than you and you are humbling yourself, that's a good example, humbling yourself, being that humble servant. But serving them opens that door that no other door can open. And that's, to me, a very important factor. But going now to these other countries, you really got to kind of study and get a little bit of history about them. Because you can do that in advance, or you can learn the hard way. I went to Serbia directly after the war that was there, when we tried to oust Milosevic. And as I went from Hungary into Serbia, right on the border, there's a McDonald's. In fact, it's the most beautiful McDonald's I've ever been in, just elaborate. And in fact, because I said that, the server went and got the manager, and the manager brought out a book, and he said, because you're American, I want you to write this in there. And so I said, all right. So, but being there, it was because I was speaking English, this lady that was a couple tables over heard me, and she came over to me. And she says, I'm Serbian, and I'm just coming home from America myself, from Wisconsin. I have family there. And she goes, where are you going? And I said, well, I'm going to Belgrade. And she says, okay, have you ever been here before? I said, no. She goes, well, you know about the war. I go, yeah. She goes, well, I know typical Americans like to take pictures, especially of war stuff. Yeah, it's true. And she goes, our people, our tradition is that we mourn for our dead 5-10 years. And so, because you're American and it was some of your planes that bombed, I wouldn't do that, because I think they'll kill you. I go, oh. And she goes, in fact, when you're in the evening walking, don't talk. Just go from your place to place, because if they hear the English, they'll probably kill you. She goes, you blend because of my dark skin. I blend with them. She says, just walk through and don't speak, and you'll be okay. I said, well, thank you. I went in and we evangelized in their park, and I shared the gospel with many people there, but an older gentleman, gray hair, I don't know how old he was, but he was gray hair, and he says, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm preaching the gospel, telling the good news of Jesus Christ. He goes, you, an American. I said, yes, sir. He goes, you don't even know. Your nation is barely 200 years old, and you're coming here to tell us about Christianity? And I go, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about the relationship to Jesus. We know this is what we say, right? And he said, give me your hand. And I put my hand up, and he goes, give me 3 fingers. So I went like this, and he grabs them, and he says, do you know what this means? I said, no, sir, I don't. He goes, typical American. I said, okay. And then he says, did the cross. I go, listen, I know that kind of stuff. I understand that religious stuff, but I'm not talking about just religion. He goes, listen. He goes, do you realize what these 3 mean? And I said, not really. He goes, it represents the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so he's really talking religion, really. I mean, religious things that fit our Christianity. In fact, if you ever watch a soccer game match with Serbia, you will see in the field of how we do the wave, as Americans? They will do the wave with the 3 fingers, representing Christianity. Okay, that's them. So he goes on to tell me, he says, do you realize what happened here? Do you even understand my country? I said, well, I know this and that, but not so much. And he told me right then and there, he goes, do you understand why we had this war? I said, no, tell me. Because I love to ask from the people, whatever nation I go to, I ask them, tell me from your perspective. Because, listen, I know one thing, 15 years abroad, is that the media in Germany is not the same media that we have in America. I have heard news, what's going on in America, called my kids and say, what is going on? And they say, what are you talking about, Dad? There's nothing on the news. I said, what? And they have called me. We heard in Germany this is going on. What? Nothing. Complete. So this media thing, not to be trusted. So this guy, I asked, tell me, what do you mean by all this? And he says, he goes, for 400 years, Muhammad, when he came, he took over our country, and we were slaves to them for 400 years. And in fact, there's a monument, and he began to tell me about a monument. I said, well, yeah, I know where that's at. In fact, we're staying right in front of that monument. And it was a little boy with a bucket, and he's laid out on the ground, and he's dead with the bucket in his hand. And he goes, do you know what that represents? I go, no, I don't. And he shakes his head. Americans. I said, okay, well, tell me, please. I want to know. He said, in our country for 400 years, we could never get a drink of water unless all the Muslims got water and their horses, their animals, and only when they were finished, then we, as Serbians of our own people of this land, could take water. This little boy waited for hours for his mother with this bucket. He got the bucket finally, as the last guy left, put it under the fountain, and this one Muslim came riding up on a horse late, saw this kid, jumped off, and with a sword slayed him. And that is what started the revolution in Serbia, and they pushed out the Muslims. And they said from that day forward, never again will we let the Muslims take over our land. Never. We promised that. And so then he says, so then we have down south in Albania, in our borders, the Muslims have taken over their land, but now they want to cross over. And he goes, I know you Americans, I know the history about In fact, I know the history about California and how parts of that was part of Mexico. And he says, now imagine now that the Mexicans, and would you agree that there's probably a lot of Mexicans in that border city? Yeah, San Diego, right? And I go, yeah, it's San Diego. He goes, no, I'm sure there's a lot of Mexicans there. I said, yeah, there are. He goes, okay, imagine if the Mexicans there say, we want to take this back and let it be Mexico again. What do you think America would do? I go, I know exactly what they would do. He goes, well, that's exactly what we were doing. He goes, because the Muslims, we promised they're never going to take a piece of our land again. So we started pushing them out. In fact, we started killing them. And he goes, and then you, American Christians, came and bombed us to help the Muslims. I got schooled right there. I'm sitting there, and I couldn't say anything. And this guy told me how he felt as a Serbian Christian to an American Christian. And I said, wow. I go, you know what? That's governments. I don't understand why they do what they do. But you know what? One thing we do need is Jesus Christ and your people. And that's all I can do. But this is what I'm talking about. The places you go to, it's good that you study some of their history and what was their nations, and especially their wars. Because it doesn't matter what nation you go to, they have warred with the neighboring countries. And now you'll have a little understanding. Okay, this is a sore subject, or at least you'll be schooled in some of it. So I would say to do that wherever you're going, to get an understanding. Now, one of the things is, I know you know the scripture in Isaiah. Remember when Isaiah heard the voice of the Lord in Isaiah chapter 6. And in verse 8, he says he heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, here I am, send me. It comes to a point, I think, in any missions ministry about hearing God's call for you to go, especially if it's beginning to go toward long term. One of the things is, I know that faith is a key point. Okay. Now, I have to mention this because during the time of my and my wife's calling, we had nothing to do with Germany. No plans. We were going to go plant a church in Colorado. Okay. And my wife was fighting me. So ladies, listen to this one. Okay. My wife was fighting me. She didn't want to go because she, at this point, said, I want to stay here and be with my kids. And, we all live on the same street and we see the grandchildren grow up. And that was her picture in her mind of our life as Christians and just serve at our church. Well, I really felt that the Lord had called me. I had a dream that I was serving, and I've never been in Colorado, but I knew, how you get, I don't know if you ever had a dream like that. Maybe for you, maybe it's a vision or something, but for me, it was a dream, and it was clearly, I was there, and I started a church. And that happened, and I got saved in 1979. That happened in 1983. And so from that point on, I started to look toward Colorado. I got I started serving because I knew I needed to learn how to serve. I went to the Bible schools that they had at Rawls Church, learned the Bible, got more solid in the Word, because I wanted to be able to answer people. But at the same time, my faith was, okay, Lord, I believe you're calling me. But then, the reality is, I'm not going anywhere unless my wife is going to go with me. She has to be with me on this. And she wasn't. I mean, we went there. I had the possibilities for a job transfer. I could have had perfect, this smooth transition. And she and I were in a parking lot. And we're talking. And it started. I mean, I can't even say started because I live in Germany and I know what snow is, but it started to snow. And that wasn't even really snow. It was just a little snowflake, really small one, and it hit the windshield and it melted that quick. And she panicked. What are we doing here? We're going to slide off the road. And she was panicking. And in fact, to the point, we got in an argument. I said, we're just going home. Forget it. You're not ready. You're not. And at least I realized she wasn't ready at that point. And I was willing to go home and get involved in ministry more here in Southern California and just serve the Lord and learn. And just learn how to serve the Lord. And then what happened is we went on a mission trip to Germany. Okay, so sometimes these short-term missions is where God begins to confirm things. I just went there to serve and to minister and to be used of the Lord. And the German people liked what I was doing. They never saw anybody who would answer questions. You know what? You know that's the biggest problem for this next generation in Germany? Between elders, because a lot of the churches are elder-ran, and those pastors, this next generation has so many questions that they go to church and they ask, and the elders and the leaders of the church will not answer. And that's why they have lost the next generation, where they have now left the church. Okay? That is the greatest problem. So here I am answering every night. When everybody else went home, I stood and answered just questions. And use that opportunity wherever you go to just say, hey, do you have any questions? And just open your Bible. And it's amazing how some of them are very easy. But it's great to give these people the opportunity to ask you a question. Because of that, the people asked for my wife and I to come back. And so here we are in California on our way. We have a big youth ministry. In that time, we had like 500 youth. It was happening. Things were going great. And we said, well, Lord is calling us now to Colorado. It looks like a green light. And then the Germans, check this out. How, to this day, I do not know, but they heard that I was going to leave that church, Chino Hills, to go to Colorado, all the way in Germany. And they called me and they said, can we pray that the Lord redirects you to us rather than Colorado? And I said, oh, that's cute. And thank you. That's to ask that question. Great. Go ahead. And everything shut. I mean, it was green light to go to Colorado and it shut. Just the doors closed. It was unbelievable. I could talk just my testimony in that alone. And yet the Lord then opened that door to Germany. And we were shocked. So then my wife panicked. Because listen, she grew up in the barrio, a Mexican neighborhood, poor, and mainly Spanish speaking. And she goes, Germany? How come I can't go to Germany? I don't, my education. And listen, part of my testimony, I met my wife at 13, had my son at 16. Okay? That was 1974. 1973, my wife started working for Planned Parenthood's little operations that they were setting out. So they wanted her to abort. She was the first phase of this whole thing. And so here we are now as a young couple back in those days saying, Lord, you want to send us? We didn't know what to do. And yet, because I had my son at 16, I started working at 16. I quit school and I went to work. You know, what are you supposed to do? So to support my family, I went to work. So I'm thinking, oh, she's kind of right. I'm going to go to academic land because Germany is school. I mean, school system is it. 3-level school system. You know that? If you want to be a goofball in school, they take all those kids and they put them in the goofball school. If you want to be a so-so student, a C student, then they send you to the C student school. And A and a good high B, then they send you to that school. They separate the people in elementary school. Yeah. And they, from that elite gymnasium, that's the elite, they get the university first opportunities, and they are the leaders. They're molding these kids for that. So they separate the system. So we're thinking, we didn't even finish school, and what are we going to go do ministry with the low people or what? And you know what? But then God did something. And you know what He did first? Have you ever heard of the pastor in Saving Grace? I'm drawing a blank on his name. Okay, the pastor in Saving Grace. We went to seek out the Lord. Lord, tell us. We had verses. I told my wife, get your verses that the Lord will confirm. And I had mine. Okay, God, speak to us so we know to go yes or no. But by faith, we're trusting that you're going to speak to us. My wife and I, we go to Saving Grace. The pastor there is dyslexic. He can't read. He can't read nothing. All his study is by memory, and he has his elders read commentaries, and he just listens to the commentaries. That's how he does his study. So we go there, and he's preaching on my wife's verse in Ephesians. He's on that one verse for her, and in the middle of his study, he says, and for you that say, I can't do it, I can't go, he goes, listen, I can't even read, and I'm the pastor here. And my wife, we have never been out of our church. Because when you're in a ministry, you don't go to other churches. You're here. So we had never been out in other churches for almost 10 years. And we're now out because we're seeking the Lord. And we go to that church, and he says this. And it speaks to my wife. She is now surrendered to the Lord. And yes, Lord, I will go. Send me. But now it's my turn. We go to Calvary Chapel Downey because they're having the big 4th of July Freedom Fest thing, the big fireworks show. And my verse was in Colossians chapter 2. And back in those days, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Orange County Supertones. They were very popular back in those days, in the 90s. And this guy gets up, he starts the concert. You got a mass in a football stadium. All these teenage kids are jumping up and down, Imagine that. And he says, stop. Everybody stop. Okay, everybody want to sit down. And imagine, to get a bunch of teenagers, after jumping, to stop and sit down. He opens his Bible and he reads Colossians chapter 2, my verses, 6 through 8. And shuts it and starts the music again. I'm sitting there blown away. And I just said, Lord, I'm going. Germany, I'm coming. That was for me. Because to stop a concert and just do that verse, what's the chances of that? And I never go to Downey. I only did it for the special evening. And so God does speak in radical ways. He wants to speak to you even before you go, because maybe he's going to use you to affect some of the people that you're going to go, that's going to change their lives in that place. Or he could be calling you to that place. So it is faith mixed in the middle of when you say with that hand, "Yeah, Lord, send me." Because it is a wonderful thing. We have seen miraculous things when we are obedient to the Lord. Now, remember in Acts 22, let me read you this verse. I think this is a wonderful. Acts 22, when Saul of Tarsus is causing havoc, and he is persecuting the church. And we see that in chapter 22, when he's now on that Damascus road, and notice in verse 8, it says, as he's now on the ground, and he hears, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And he says, and I answered, and I said, "Who art thou, Lord?" And he said to me, "I am Jesus, the Nazarene, in whom you are persecuting." And those who were with me beheld the light, to be sure, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking to me. And I said, "What shall I do, Lord?" And the Lord said to me, "Arise and go into Damascus, and there it will be told of all that has been appointed for you to do." I think it's so important first that we, before go any mission trip, say, "Lord, what do you want me to do?" Because not everybody is going to be doing the same thing most of the time. Yes, you will do some things, but you need to ask, "Lord, what do you want me to do?" Because an individual person, when I went on that group of 15, 20 people to Germany, there was only my wife and I that got called to go back and to stay. Okay? And yet, some people have greater effects. I think a lot of it is because people need to prepare their hearts. And to have this type of question coming from their heart, "Lord, what do you want me to do?" Because that's a prepared heart. "Lord, I will do anything. I will be the servant. I will, whatever it be." But you know what? It's amazing when you start being that servant and you humble yourself, how God opens doors to certain people that could be the game changer of that nation or that city or that village. And you know what? It's because of you being prepared in your heart, saying, "Lord, what do you want me to do?" And it's amazing to me is how it says, "all that has been appointed for you to do." Why are you here tonight? How much is God's Spirit already working in you that you come here and God is appointing things? He's preparing you for something that is greater than you're even imagining right now. I didn't plan to stay in Germany, but I see now in hindsight what God has planned all along in many ways. And what has happened in the Calvary movement, but even in the Christian movement, because now getting the gospel out was one of the points here in this question in your booklet. How? Okay, for me, getting the gospel out, I'm in the Reformation revival part of Germany. I had Luther and Zwingli debate over the Eucharist, whether it turns into the body of Christ or not. I've had John Calvin in our city. I had some other reformers, great reformers, in our city. So I'm in this Christianese land where they think they don't need anything, and yet I see that those that say I'm alive, but they're dead. And how do you deal with people like that? That is a greater challenge, really. In fact, I even had some churches tell me I would rather go do mission works in third world countries rather than come back to Germany. It's too hard to deal with that type of people. So as we've gone, I've looked and said, okay, how can we reach these people? Well, one of the things we've done is because there is, you got to just look at the people. Ask people questions. Because, listen, they know enough Christian vocabulary that can trick you to believe that they are Christians. Okay? There's a thing called, if you were ever Catholic before, I was a Catholic before, catechism, but there's also biblische Unterricht. It's basically the same, but it's from the Protestant side. So it is a common thing in the villages that around 12 years to 15-year-old, that in the village, you would get these age group kids, and they would come to the church, and normally it's a 2-year program. Now because of complaints, they're bringing it down to 1 year with this generation. But normally 2 years. It's been 2 years for generations that you learn Bible. You learn doctrine. You learn the creeds. You learn, it's almost kind of like what do you call that? Christian Cub Scout stuff. Awanas, yeah, it's like Awanas and stuff like that. You know how you have games and it's all Bible based, and you're pushing these type of things, and they're learning as a young kid. Well, they have a program similar, and so those kids are in there sitting there. They learn it. They have to repeat, but you know why most of them are in there? It's because when they finish the course, their names are put in the village newspaper, and all the village people give money. Some will walk away with 2,000 euros. So there's heathen kids just suffering through that, but they know the payoff is coming. And so you got these type of people that you will meet on the street. You know what? They know verses. They can tell you certain things. But you know what? They were only there for the money. Never born again. No clue about a relationship to Jesus Christ. And this is the kind of stuff that you need to learn, because every country has something similar. And you need to not just say, oh, because they use Bible verses, think that they are Christians, really. You got to, not insultingly, say, question like like interrogating, but you got to get into this relationship and talking with them, because you don't know truly. Is it just religion of their country that has formed this appearance of godliness? That's something I would say, understand wherever you go. So what we did is, one of the things with the adults, we started a ministry, a prophecy conference. Okay? And through the prophecy conference, we're getting all denominations of churches there in Germany. It's really been a super hit. But when we first started, we said, prophecy conference. You know what they thought it was? A conference for prophets. So we had to learn. That doesn't work. That works here in Southern California. So we have to say biblical prophecy conference. That's biblische Prophetie. So you learn what words you can use and not use in certain places. Okay? And how they're thinking, because it's not always the same. And so it's amazing that the Lord has used that event to cross over into many denominations. Okay? The devil is doing the same thing in many different ways, crossing over, bringing false teachings and so forth. And this is what caused me to even want to start the prophecy conference, because this Christian region, which is, again, I can say, Bible Belt of Germany had a changeover. Okay, I had a prophecy a guest speaker. I don't know if you know him. He runs in the Calvary's, Ray Youngen. Ray Youngen, he was very excited for me to invite him because he's German. And it was his first time back in Germany, so he was excited. But he is writing on the esoteric or the New Age movement or Eastern mysticism that is coming back into the church. That is his specialty. So we're having a conference dealing with that. I picked him up at Frankfurt Airport, and but because of the snow, the traffic was really bad, so I took the train. And because of the train, you go into the main Bahnhof in Germany, Frankfurt. And right when we got off of there to make our transfer, he goes, wait, I want to go into that bookstore right there. And we went into the bookstore. He says, okay, where's the Christian area? And we looked, and he says, okay. And he goes, no, wow, look at all this. Oh. But this, look at this. This is the Christian area. And he looked at the shelves. This is what he does. He counts the shelves and how many Christian books are in the shelves. How many Bibles, commentaries, who are the commentaries, who are the so-called Christian. And even in that Christian shelf in that particular place, there was a lot of false teachers, okay? But then he says, okay, now let's look at the other. And he was schooling me. And he says, look how much Buddhism, New Age, these are our New Age, and a lot of them I never knew, I never heard of. And he started to give me the names, because this guy believes this guy is connected with this pastor, and this big church, this guy, and he started schooling me in this place, right? And this is just in the Bahnhof. So we go to our city, and in the city next to us, Siegen, they call it Holy Siegen, because that's where the revival started 150 years ago. We go into that big chain book, like Barnes & Noble, their style or whatever they have there, and he asked the same question. So we go. They had literally 4 or 5 books, Christian. And the rest, 36 shelves, and I'm talking, what he means by a shelf like this, 36 shelves of New Age, Christian, Buddhism, how you can be into yoga and all this stuff in Holy Siegen. And he says, Edmund, this city is not a Christian city any longer. This is now New Age, neo-pagan. It has converted. This is how you tell. He goes, because a secular company only sells by demand. He says, go ask them. Maybe they have books in the back. So because I speak German, I went and asked the people. They said, no, that's whatever we have Christian, that's what there is. He says, it's converted. And that's another thing that you can look at when you're in maybe a more popular or bigger city. You can go into their bookstore and look what the people are reading. Then you know the spiritual temperature of that country. Yeah, I took him to France. France is completely, we went to France to go to the bookstores. He's researched. In fact, he wrote a new book, and he talks about it on this point. He says, I can say I've been there, it's documented, I saw what it is. And that's a frightening thing. But at the same time, if you're going to Europe, that means then learn about New Age. So now you can confront those people when you start talking Christianese, then you can say, well, what do you think about this? And you will say, because they will say, oh, yeah, oh. And you will say, nope, the Word of God says this. And this is what you need to do in preparing when you go to whatever country God is going to let you go to prepare. Because when you prepare, then you're going to see the great difference in whatever gospel message that when you start preaching, you know what? Again, You can preach the gospel and they will agree with you. But you could get a new ager right behind you and they will agree with them too. So that's what I mean. In preparing the gospel message, you also need those conversations afterwards and begin to find out where these people are at. And then you can go to really the next step, which leads into discipleship. And hopefully that church you're working with has a good discipleship program. That's a question. Whoever the team leader is going to that place, you need to ask them, do you have a discipleship program of some sort? If they don't, then say, okay, then you guys need to make one up or come up with one. And like when I took our German team to Brazil, because in Brazil, that's the next largest population of Germans is Brazil. A lot of them fled there because of the war. Brazil opened the doors to the Nazis. And so there's a big group, in fact, German corporations, there's a lot of business down there. Important, I found a Portuguese person. The Brazilian Portuguese and Portuguese from Portugal is a little bit different, but I got the majority of it translated. I had it, get this, English, translated into German for my German people who will be now discipling people in Portuguese. Well, I sent it to the Portugal person I met. They translated it. But then I said, I learned, because I asked questions, that Brazilian Portuguese is different than Portugal. It has a little slang to it. So then I emailed it, and because it was mainly done, they corrected it, and we had a program by the time we got there. And we got to do discipleship. And to this day, and you're talking 10 years later, they're still using that program in discipleship. But it's just groundwork here. And this is the kind of stuff that you guys, as a team, need to think about, how you can minister and bless the people. I'd like to pause here and just add, if you have questions.
You have
Mm-hmm.
Tools to find common questions, like arguments that you might have.
It depends where you're going. Now, like let's say Philippines, most likely it's dominated with Catholic. Okay, so those type of questions, I'm sure there's booklets. I've seen in a lot of bookstores, there's booklets that deal with these type. You have a lot of apologetic websites, Ron Rhodes. There's tons of them. I mean, I'm sure. Huh? Or Carr, yeah. That's a good one, and they could give you good answers, good questions, and then you can make a cheat sheet for yourself. And
I don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you really, you got to understand, especially in the Catholic movement, okay? Because now Germany is mostly Catholic, so I have to brush up. Do you realize that because this guy, the Pope, is now he's a Jesuit, excuse me, but he's a Jesuit priest. You know that. You know what a Jesuit priest in the Catholic system of the priesthood, there was, in a sense, a secret society type thing. The Jesuit priesthood they have an oath. And the oath was that they swear, it's a death oath, that they will kill, destroy, and it gets into like strangle, I mean, it gives you all these death things. The Protestants, by any means, their children, their families, and blah, 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 and destroy the Protestant. That is the oath of the leader of the Catholic Church. He took that oath. He can't recant on that. This guy has to be watched. Really. And most people don't even know about this. When that news came out that he is a Jesuit, shook many of the Europeans. See, but Americans don't know so much. Europe knows Catholicism. They live that. Okay, they've been through it. But again, there's just a lot to learn. There's tons of stuff to learn to prepare. Well, I got saved in 79. I went in 1980 to the Bible school. And in that Bible school, we had to do practicums. I had to do ministry. So I started in ministry, serving in the church, a little here, a little there, mainly youth ministry. And then in 1986 is when I really began to do youth ministry in a big way. And then I became the youth pastor for Calvary Chapel Chino Hills in 91 when we founded the church. Because the church was founded in houses, and my house was one of them. And then in 99 is when we left for Germany. So we're coming up on our 15th year now. Seen a lot. We were there when the Euro came in. We were there when 9/11 came in. Happened. We've seen the reaction, many different reactions. Yeah. Yes, very, very much. But you know what's amazing to me? When you can, if you can, learn the good morning, thank you, just a few phrases in their language, that makes a big difference, a giant difference. But when you say, I know about your history, I know you're so-and-so, can you tell me more? But just because you knew, and now they can give you more information, but just because you knew someone of their country, they will respect you. They will, really, I'm talking, there's a big difference. Big difference. So it's good to know their city if you can find information, but how can I say it? I don't want to say it in a bad way, but it's good to ask them questions about their land, their culture, and give positive feedback to them. And they really, you see how, you know what, we all have national pride of some sort, Yeah. But you know what, until you do, it's amazing. When you come to this point, only then do you begin to cross over. Then they will begin. When they trust you enough and they see there's that friendship, there's some kind of connection going on, they'll open up to the next phase where they begin to talk about things, the bad side. Like, I've been in German houses where Grandpa, is a Nazi picture with Grandpa on the wall, and because they love him, but they don't have to tell me their story. And I've been in houses where I've heard amazing, unbelievable stories. I've been in a house because where I'm at is where the Americans came through, and where I was sitting in the house, and the father of the person of our church is sitting in there, and he says, "See that hill right there? and it overlooks the highway, little 2-lane highway that goes through the valley. He says, that hill is where by that tree right there, is where our Panzer, the tank, was. And it was camouflaged. And all the kids in the neighborhood knew of the village. And the Americans didn't see it. And the Americans, because of that road, they were coming through there, they put a tank on the other hill. See that other hill past it? I said, yeah. He says, and one day we were watching, and our tank, they backed it up and they moved it and they were setting it up, and they came up over the hill and they shot it and they blew it up. And this guy's like they blew it up. You know, he was like all into it. I was going, oh man, is that in a flashback or what? And he was telling me the story. He goes, and we were little boys, and we ran over and we saw the dead Americans, and they blew up the tank and all what it did. And I'm sitting there like, what am I doing here? You know? And the Lord lets sometimes when they feel comfortable enough with you, it's amazing how people will begin to share some things. Then you can really go in deeper and minister the Word of God with them in a deeper way. It's amazing, really. But it takes trust. It takes one other thing real quick. I was always told, and whether I'm right or wrong, you make the decision. I was always told with the Germans, you know, when you come up to them, they're going to do this. You know, that's German. And I said, well, I don't do that. You know, it's Christian. I hug. And oh, be careful, be careful. I said, okay, whatever. So I went over there, and when I grabbed their hand to shake, and then I pull them in, I always gave them a hug. And they melted. They melted. And you know what? Our church, of all the German churches, we are known for that today. When you talk to the people in all the German churches, our church is known for that. Isn't that amazing? I learned that. You know why? Because my father was murdered when I was almost 5 years old. My mom had 10 children. Okay? And we grew, it was hard to make it, survive as children. We were poor, raised up on welfare, Social Security, and so forth. And one thing, we just had to survive mode. And in one way, it was a lot of good things because, you know, to this day, my brothers and sisters, we never fight. You know, everybody we had to care for one another because that's what we learned through what we went through. And yet at the same time, because my mom couldn't do it, I mean, of course, she gave affection to as much as she could to each one of us, but we were not the lovey, you know, the hugging family. And we're now older, and I thought about that. Because I would come to churches, and our church, and we hug each other and loving on each other. And I thought, and I can't even do that with my own mom. So I began to hug her more, and I crossed the line. You know what I did? I kissed my mom. Now imagine that. That was not done in my family. 10 kids raised by a mom that deserved everything. Kisses and beyond kisses to raise 10 kids by herself. She went through it. And yet we didn't do that. And you know what? Because I broke that mold and I began to kiss her when we were saying bye or when we saw each other, hug her and I kiss her on her cheek. Do you know that affected my whole family? To my brothers and sisters now do the same. Even the non-believing ones. That's where I learned so much. And so I said, no, I'm hugging these brothers and sisters. And it changed our church, the German people, who are known, hand only, you know, it changed them. And how, I mean, that's what I mean. It's so simple little things, but it makes a big difference. Big difference. Did you have a question? Uh-huh. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, yes and no. The- okay, you got a mixture. Okay. This is, I'll tell you how it goes. Uh, they have to in school go to the concentration camps. They are forced by the government to learn about their sin. Okay, so they go to the the concentration camps. They do a tour, and you can see them. Because I've been in there at the same time, and you can see. Okay, they don't want to be there. That's not me. I didn't do that. That's what they're saying. Why do I have to come here? You know, it's my grandpa. That generation is the one that did that. I didn't do that, and I have to live with all the nations around Europe that don't like us because of what my grandparents did. That's the attitude. Okay. Um, Yet at the same time, there is a neo-Nazi movement that is growing and growing. Russia has a big, Greece has a giant neo-Nazi movement. Okay, it is out of control in Greece, and the government is almost condoning it. Okay, so you got these Nazis where I've been in the east. The Nazis are more in the east, the Russian side, the former Russian side, and so they told me, hey, the Germans, oh, those are Nazis over there. I said, oh, really? So this is who I am. I walked up to them, and because I'm brown, they think I'm Turkish, and they hate the Turks because a lot of Turks are there. And so I immediately say, hey, hello, I'm from America. And you can see they're confused because they want to get angry that, you don't talk to me, Turk, but then they're kind of like, huh? I go, yeah, I'm from California, and I'd like to ask you some questions. They go, oh, and they're thinking I'm going to ask like how to get to some place. And I said, are you guys Nazis? I just asked them. And they go, you can see they look at each other. They go, well, yeah, we are. I go, so tell me, what is a Nazi? Tell me what a Nazi is today. And they told me their problems. And you know what? It depends because there's different Nazis, phases of Nazism. And these guys were people that are angry with their government because they're allowing foreigners to come in, and they're paying taxes for these foreigners, and the foreigners are getting special loans and so forth when they themselves can't get the same loans. And this is what they're angry about. And they're saying, we will never, and our children will never get the same privileges as these people, and we're paying for them. And this is what they're angry about. That's one type of Nazism. And then there's the others where they're just Aryan, white supremacists. That's it. And we're going to become gods, and we're going to rule the world. That's another type. And so it depends. So but to me, I love talking to them. Don't be afraid. What's the worst thing they're going to, when you're in a foreign land, it's easier when they speak another language, because when they cuss you out, you don't know what they're saying. When I went to England, then I had in Scotland, they were cussing, and I knew all the words they were saying. And I was going, oh man, these guys are really angry. That's the difference. When they're cussing at you in a foreign land, you could just, no problem. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely. But you got to, France is unique. You got to think about it. Because remember, uh, how many years ago was that? When you guys, I was there, and when you guys here were pouring out French wine and calling French fries freedom fries. Remember that? Remember that? Okay. Before, when we would go to France, because I'd take my wife to dinner there or whatever, because it's only a couple hours away. And when we'd go, the French are rude people. I'm sorry, but that's how they are. And you know what it is? It's only for the fact of this. They're angry that the world's not speaking French and it's speaking English. See, because they warred, the history goes back, they warred with England forever. And England won. The world international language is English. That's the problem. So you go in there and you speak English, and they are tweaked. They just don't want. So we go to restaurants, you can't read nothing, and you ask for help. No, don't speak. Lost, can you tell me? No, don't speak. They even say, no, we don't speak English. And they're speaking English. So that's how it is. So that goes on. Then this whole thing happened. Because it was all about the war and how, and then we were saying, hey, shoot, French, you're lucky. We saved you. Look at all the American cemeteries that are there. If you've ever been to France, man, it's like a sea of crosses where we gave our life to free them from the Nazis. And going back after we did that whole thing with the pouring the wine out and freedom fries, we went back and everybody spoke English. I said, oh, wow. I go, I was just here a year ago and you guys didn't speak. You guys must be in a crash course of learning English. Oh, why do you say that? I go, you guys have been the most, and I told them, the most rudest people, and why do you do that to yourself? I go, the whole world is in a, one world system, because it is. We're, buying and selling from one another, and you guys are outside the circle because you got this attitude. And why is this? They said, well, know that Americans, only just Americans, how much you spend here every year, especially Paris, how many Americans and the money, and now because of this pouring out of this freedom fries that you guys are doing, it cut like almost like 80% of their economic of just tourism, just killed them. And so they were told, and in fact, I watched it on television over there, where the head of tourism there did a whole hour special in Europe about them changing, that we know we need to change, we have a problem in this, and we will change. But they haven't changed. So, and it is, you got to learn what gets them fired up, what's their weaknesses. There's a lot of things to learn. Okay? Any other questions? Oh, wow. Amazing. Wow, yeah, we helped lay the foundation on that. And Rosarito, up in the hills, when you off the main drag, then you just go up back in those hills. I think they sold it. I think Pancho said that they sold it to, I don't know if it's still Calvary anymore. I think in another church. So, but I don't know what time. We're good. Well, oh, you got a question? I could say that the one point is servanthood. Really, I don't know. Work ethics is it's a big thing, and when I see it, and you see it really more in the next generation, they don't know how to work. I hate to say that, but I don't know, they're just babied here or what? I don't know. And so when they get there, they don't know what hard work is. They'll be like Caltrans guys. Hopefully no Caltrans guys. They're all standing around. Go behind the corner. They're all with one shovel standing around, and that project should have been done, and they could be doing something else that we need, There's a lot of things, and our people are saying, oh, we're getting help. Oh, and we're excited that, some of the things that we always wanted to get done can be, but it doesn't happen in the end because, mentally, to me, I always try to get my team as a special ops, like a military thing. We're going in, we have so much time, we got to rescue people, save them. So that's the gospel ministry, but we have to also do certain things, and we only have so much time. And you gotta run hard and get it done. And then when you come back, then you will see the fruit of it all. But a lot of people, they get there and they get, and I know that especially when we see a hard team, our people want to bless the teams back, and we do special things that do, and it's amazing. It just, the church works with one another in many different ways, where the blessing comes back, but the long-term blessing of spiritual work, you'll see one day before the Lord when that day comes. But really, I think strategizing, you got to think. All you got to do is think here. Okay, this is what I try to tell churches. If you're part of a team, understand your team. Okay, who's on the team? What is the strengths in your team? Okay, so you got that strength there, but well, now let's find what's our weakness. Because wherever you're going, if it's a church, if it's a brand new baby church, that means every ministry that you have here, at least the foundational ones, they're going to need there. And if none of you, let's say all of you guys or men's ministry, women's ministry, or some other type of ministry, and none of you have done children's ministry, well, they're going to have children's ministry. So some of you are going to have to go to the children's ministry leader here and say, how do you deal with children? What are you doing? And get a Q&A with them. Because then you can be a useful servant on that team. Someone has to be, okay? And this is where I see a lot of lack too when some teams come. They're not thinking this way. How can some of the teams that are coming, we do a lot of, we have an open door to the prisons. So I've had a lot of ministries, when they hear, we could go into the German prisons, they are trained and geared up for that. Okay, that's fine. But, hopefully we're not going to be only known, hey, that's a door to the German prisons. Because we have people in our church that need to be ministered to as well. And so it's really getting that balance and asking, hey, what do you guys need there? And hopefully via Jesse or whoever's leading that team, they're going to communicate with that pastor. What is going on? And listen, you know what's the basic thing? Here I am, a Mexican in Germany. Okay? They don't have Mexican food there. They have a place, they call it a Mexican restaurant. You know what it is? Okay, let me tell you. Oh my gosh. I don't know where they found these old, like, style Taco Bell shells. You know, the taco shells? You know, those ones you can buy pre-made? All stale. This isn't a restaurant. This is a chicken taco. They deep fried chicken nuggets, throw them in there, and put lettuce and tomato. And then for the rice, Mexican rice, it's white steamed rice, like, you know, Japanese rice. And they put it in a cone and they put ketchup on top of it. And they sprinkle a cup of corn because corn, anything with corn makes it Mexican. So I am dying. Like, we sometimes, when there's a time where we're just wanting our food for as missionaries. And so it's been wonderful to get a little taste of home. And that's something that you guys can think of. You know, maybe a little something from home if the missionary is an American. You know, think about them, a little something, maybe a little thing from the bookstore that you might just, hey, and that's really blessed us in many, many ways. So that's another little secret. Yeah. Yeah, but they were old. They were old. Yeah.
Or this is more like this. You say like prepare like to go out. What if like you suggest too? What if like before you go out on missions, maybe like you pick a park, and you like go there like restoration? Because I mean, it's not about this. You stand around and don't have work ethic. That way, like, you know, if you go like you pick a park, you talk to the city, whatever you got to do, because there's also like a lot of homeless people at parks usually, so you can kind of like handle all that stuff. You know, maybe like the weekend, go there, minister to people. You know, take some benches. You know what I mean? Plant a couple trees or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That could be like a good little program.
Yeah.
Sounds like pre-mission.
Yeah.
Training.
You got it. It is good to, of course, depends where the church is at, to see the needs, try to, okay, of course you're there to evangelize, to reach, and they should be doing that as themselves. That should be already going on, and you're coming alongside helping them. But coming alongside and helping them in that is a wonderful and a very powerful thing to do. But at the other side, you can want to come alongside them and find out what is their needs. Is their toilets broken? Do they need something built? Because we deal with Russia. In fact, I'll be going to Russia next month. A lot of the times we go up there, and they're staffers. They have given up everything. They don't have any money. They're really poor, and they just need a shower put in or something basic. You know, something that we have, and it's very. Some of our guys, you know, construction is not a big thing. For me, yeah, but for them, no. So, and it's just using those gifts, finding out, okay, what's the gifts, and who can make this flow. You know, that's how it is. And it's good to know what your gifts are in the team, because let's say if you know the team crew, and then you hear, hey, that you're talking with somebody and they mention something, you can't do it, but you go, oh, on the team, hey, I want you to meet, and they could talk to that team member, and maybe it causes something to happen. Yeah, but also know the gifts of one another. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Okay. Well, thank you so much for inviting me.